Hi everyone, this is just a quick little tutorial on how to use our SketchPad 5.1. And so I'm just going to be showing you a lot of the important tools that you can use for SketchPad. But what you want to do first, if you're ever not sure what to use, is you want to go down to the user guide, which is at the bottom. And you click that, and there's a spot that says, after you look at the welcome, right under there on the left-hand side, there's a spot that says Tools. And if you click on that, then you click on Brushes right underneath that. What you'll see is what all of the different types of brush options that you have in SketchPad are. So there's pencil, pen, paintbrush, arrow, and all sorts of different ones that you can explore. So when you get some time, go in there and just start exploring what the different brush options are. And just to show you where that's located, if you go back up to the tools icon in the upper right, that's the first little box, and then you go underneath and then you click on it. So right now it says calligraphy, but there you can see pencil, pen, paintbrush, arrow, spirograph, web, fur, spray paint, and many more. So that is where you would select those. And what I'm just going to show you right now is some of the different tools you can use to edit within there. So this is I just selected pencil. And in pencil, you can draw a line, you can draw a circle. You can also play around with what's called the fill. And what I'm clicking on here now, this is what you click on. You have to make sure that it says 100% on the right-hand side of fill. And then what that does is it just fills in whatever you're drawing. You see now I selected so that there's no fill. You can change the color of the outline by clicking on that color box, and you can select those from there. There are linear options, radial options, pattern options. Play around with the different choices that you have. Okay, so this option that I'm highlighting here is called Paint to Layer. What that does is most of the time you want to leave that off so that you can continually edit each little piece or each little shape that you draw with. But if you do click that on, what that does is it freezes whatever you draw while Paint to Layer is on. It freezes it. So see, I turned it on, so now I draw that pink circle. And that pink circle, when I click the select tool, I cannot move it. But the other one that I made earlier, I can still move because when I drew that one on, it did not have paint to layer on. So that's a quick tip. And if you're having difficulty and wondering why you can't move things, always check to see if your paint to layer button is selected. At the bottom here, what I was just playing with was the outline size. So you can adjust that at the bottom of this. Okay, let's go ahead and check out some more tools. So other than brushes, we have the stamp option. So if you click on stamp, you can go ahead and check some of those out, what you can do with it. Stamp tool gives you sort of a design or a pattern, and then you can use that design or pattern, and instead of drawing with just a straight line, you can make drawings with that stamp. So that is located in that same area where the pencils and stuff were, just a little further down to the right. You click stamp. You can adjust that just the same ways as you could adjust it. There are a bunch of options for stamps, which I was just in. You select whatever stamp, and then you just go ahead and draw with that. And you can create them larger, smaller, change the size, change the direction, all sorts of options on there. Alright, let's go back to the SketchPad user guide and let's check out what you can do with line. So with line, that tool is also located in that same first tool brush type area. And what you can do is you can either make straight lines or you can continuously draw with a line. This is so that you can make your own shape. You can adjust the size and thickness of the line as well. So there are lots of different options for playing around with that tool. Okay, so just to see where that's located, again, it's in that same brushes option, and that's a continuous line. This is one that you can just do point by point by point. Okay, let's check out back in the user guide what they have to say about using the path tool. Path tool lets you sort of create a line, but you get to give that line some curves. And what you have to do is when you're creating those curves, you have to adjust them while still holding down. So don't release. You want to adjust and move your cursor while that's still happening. So here is where you find that path tool. It was right underneath where line is. You can play around with the fill. You can play around with the outline color. You can play around with the size of the line. So that was just a straight line, me just connecting the dots. And then if I hold and click and curve, I can adjust the way that line goes like that. The next part I want to show you is shape. So if we go back to that user guide, you have all sorts of different shapes to use, and what you can do is you can see there's options to put a cutout inside of them or to leave them solid, and there are all sorts of different shapes which you can check out in the user guide or just start experimenting with them. You can change the color, you can change the outline, all of those options are there as well. So now let's see what it's like to do your own. So what you can do is you just go ahead and do that shape tool. Notice it's next to the brush tool. It is not underneath there. And then there's all sorts of different shapes you can select from. I'm just going to select one. I'm going to play around with the number of sides this one has, how far apart they are. I'm going to play around with the color that's on the inside of it. And you can also play around with whatever outline color you want for that as well. And then you can go ahead and just stamp it and move it and place it on however you want. The next tool we're going to look at is called text, and text is simply that, anything you want to write inside yours. There are lots of different options that SketchPad has for you to use. And you can play around with the size, the orientation, and all sorts of things like that. You can center it, put it to the left, put it to the right. There are all sorts of different options there. So I'm just going to show you how to do that in just a second. So here we have the text tool. I'm just going to make a text box. And I'm just going to type something like hello in. And then I'm just going to edit it from there. You can change the fill if you want to get rid of fill, if you want to add fill. You can use any of those patterns, lines, any of that. You can change all sorts of things in here. There are lots and lots of options. Here I am just moving it from left to center to right. You can make it bold, italicized, underlined. You can strike through, and then you can adjust how tall it is, the space between the letters, and if you have more words, the space between the words. This next part is one that everyone always loves so much, and that is the clip art. And so for clip art, there are tons of options. And what I'm going to do is just show you what you can do with them. You can change the size, you can make them smaller, larger, you can rotate them. Tons of options there. That button is the little smiley face type button, which is located next to the T for text. And if you click down on that picture next to the cow, there are all of the tons of pictures. You pick whichever one you want. You can change the size. With those little arrows that show up, you can rotate it. The next thing I want to show you, the last thing with clip art and many other things, is something called the opacity tool. And what that means is how transparent it is and how bold it is. So if you want it to be able to be a little bit of see-through, you can change the opacity by moving that barrier. The next thing I want to show you is we want to move on to what are called the utilities. The utilities, the most important tool that you're going to use over and over again is the select tool, and that is just simply that little arrow in the upper left hand corner of yours, and that lets you select and move and edit all of the tools that you have. So here is where the select tool is, right there in the upper left. And I'm just going to play around with a couple things and change their size. You can move some of them. You can select large areas of spaces by holding down and clicking over them and move the whole area instead of just moving one or two things. So you can clump things together. And then you can make it larger or smaller and rotate. In addition to rotating, you can hold down and what will pop up is a little menu, which is sort of your editing menu. You can send things forward, send things back, cut, copy, paste, duplicate, lots of different options there. The next tool you want to take a look at is called crop, and that is located right next to the select button that we were using, and that will just change what you want in your image, if you want to make it smaller or larger or just focus on one area. That is what the crop tool is used for. So here we have the crop tool, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to select it, and I'm just going to cut off some of the edges of mine and make it just a little smaller, make it a little more centered. That will make my picture look just a little more professional. The next tool I want to show you is the zoom tool. That just lets you get really close in or really far away from your image so that you can add lots of details. That tool is next to the crop tool, and it is a little magnifying glass picture. So you can find that, you can zoom in, you can move things around. As soon as you click on that, some buttons will show up, and you can get in real close or get really far away. Next up, what we've got is the fill button, and you can use this to fill in large areas of your paper like the background, or if you have certain clip art pieces, you can fill in those areas. There are lots of options for that. That tool is located in the toolbox. If you go up to that, it is that little paint bucket that is sort of spilling out. And what you do is you just select which type of fill you want, and then you click on where you want it to go. And then you see some of them, like the linear ones, like I selected, have this option, and if you pull that line closer or further away, it will adjust how much light or dark or whatever color is where. So that is what you can play around with for that. And then if you don't like that one, you can change that. When you're all done, you want to click that red Finish Editing button on the bottom left-hand corner of your page. The last couple tools I want to show you are, one of them is the Open tool. So if you had made more art projects in there, you could click that little file box and open it. The next one is Export, and that is how you would save your work. So you would click Save at the top. You could select what type of format and all of that, and then you would hit download. Then if you download that, you could easily email that to me. The last one is that little plus sign there, and that is if you want to make a blank or a new project. Enjoy!